What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 44 of the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by charlottesweb.com. Charlotte's Web is a CBD company. Chewy and I have been using their products for quite some time with great results. It's something that we use to help with post-exercise soreness. It's been beneficial in restorative sleep cycles for us, and also just something that's been helpful with, dealing with daily stressors of life. So head over to charlottesweb.com, and if you guys use the promo code Chewjitsu10, that'll get you 10% off of your total purchase price of CBD products. And if you want to learn more about CBD, check out episode 38 of the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. That podcast is pretty much all about CBD and the benefits and how CBD affects the body. So episode 38 is where you can check that out. And if you love the podcast and want more content, head over to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We have unreleased conversations, Q&A sessions with our guests, videos, and a bunch of other stuff that's exclusive to Patreon subscribers. So that's patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we talk about how Jiu-Jitsu can build courage and how that courage can lead to confidence in many other aspects of your life. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode of the podcast. As always, if you love the show, head over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. We really appreciate that. And here's the podcast.
I got a message from two different guys on my Instagram, and I wanted to kind of read off to them and talk about Jiu-Jitsu there's ways to do it in other forms, but Jiu-Jitsu can be a way to do it, but developing courage. So I got a message from a guy here. His name is Alex, and Alex's message looks something like this. He said, I just wanted to say that recently I started Jiu-Jitsu, and it has been the most incredible thing I could have done. The virtues of the art has instilled in me, will last, off the mat, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, the reason I'm messaging you is this. I lived my life up until now. He says he's 25 currently, in fear of everyone and everything. Hell, even public places made me nervous and everything. Since I started training, I haven't felt that way. In fact, I feel more confident than ever. And a big thanks to you, because it's been a huge part because of your channel. Watching the videos has been kind of a motivation for him to get out there and train. And so he says that, watching the videos has been helpful to him to get him into the gym, and as well as to keep training. And he says thank you and all that other stuff. And then the other message that I got came from this younger guy here who says, I know this sounds stupid, but I'm scared it might, because he wants to train Jiu-Jitsu. He said he wants to start Jiu-Jitsu, but he's scared it might be awkward, and he's frail, and he says, I'm worried about having people in my gym, how they'll treat me, and mainly I'm just generally anxious with wrestling people. The idea just kind of makes me feel like a pussy. His words, not mine. And I tend to hold back, and I don't know how to overcome it. Do you have any ideas? And so I thought this was interesting, because I got these two messages from these two different people. One who recently was talking about how fearful and anxious he was, and then he started training. And then the other one is in the other boat where he's feeling anxious and nervous, and he wants to train, but again, doesn't know how to get over it. Mm-hmm. And I was reading a book recently, and in the book, the guy talked about his idea of, courageousness being having courage. Mm-hmm. He said that, the difference between the courageous person, the person with courage, and the coward is that they both have fear. They both see fear, but one chooses to listen to it. The other doesn't. So for instance, the coward has the fear and says, I'm fearful. I'm not going to do it. Backs off. Whereas the person with courage looks at it, sees the fear, and then says, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. Right. And so that's the big difference. And so I think that a lot of times, and again, Jiu-Jitsu is not the only way you can do this. There's tons of ways to do this, but Jiu-Jitsu can be a way to do it, because a lot of times there are certain experiences that we'll have on and off the mat related to Jiu-Jitsu that conjure up fear and that we have to face down. Like, for instance, just getting into the gym for some people is kind of a thing that conjures up a lot of fear. And then, when you start rolling with certain types of people, when you're working on certain types of like submission holds or working on certain types of locks, I know that people are super fearful of leg locks, and then they start working them and they're like, oh, these aren't so bad. Or hell, even going to a competition, that's something that conjures up a lot of nervousness and fear and anxiety in people. I know guys that are really good Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, good black belts in competitions. They win, right? But they are scared. They're nervous. So much so that they'll puke before matches. They're puking up before matches. And these are good competitors. These aren't like scrubs. These are guys that are like tough. And you think, damn, those guys are getting that nervous, and they face it down anyway. And I know guys that were like good MMA fighters that did the same thing. They'd be so nervous before matches they'd puke. Now, like, I didn't ever puke, but I remember always experiencing a certain level of nervousness or heightened awareness or anxiousness or whatever you want to call it. Anticipation is what I kind of consider it now before matches. And those fears are always there, but you just choose to face them down. And it's a valuable lesson because, man, you can take that over to a lot of different areas of your life off the mat where, you're going to get fear, and then you can see it and be aware of it. I mean, because awareness in itself is kind of liberating because you can look at it and be like, why am I so nervous, or why is this bothering me? And then you can choose to honor that, or you can choose to simply, say, look, it's just fear for fear's sake, and then face it down and keep on moving forward. So I thought that was interesting. So I do know that some people listen to the podcast, they watch the videos and things like that haven't started training yet. And if it's something that they truly want to do, I encourage you to start training because everybody's nervous in the beginning. But again, it's just an exercise of courage for you to get out there and do something you want to do. And so it's a valuable thing to take away from the martial arts.
Well, we had a guy who's a brown belt now at the gym that he was constantly he said it was like 2 months it took him. Like, he was really nervous about coming in. He was overweight, and he would drive up and then not come inside, and did that for like 2 months, or drove past the gym. And did he tell you kind of exactly what the breaking point or what that tipping point was that allowed him to walk in?
I don't think he ever told me the breaking point. I think eventually he just said, screw it, I'm going to get in there and do it. He finally just said, I'm going to walk in, and I'm going to check this place out. But he never really told me what the breaking point was. And it was closer, I think, to 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a long time, man. Like, he was driving up to the gym. He'd see back then we used to have like a little neon open sign, and then he would drive away,
I wonder what that is, though. Like, as a young kid, I'm probably mentioned this before. My brother got jumped. He got like his orbital bone broken, fractured, and he had to have surgery and all this stuff. And I was like probably 12 or something. And we were just walking in our neighborhood, and I wasn't with him that day. But like, man, I remember like a car would drive by. We were just walking, a car would drive by down the street, and I get like fearful that something was going to happen, And it's just this. You just get feared over time. It just builds and builds, and then I guess that maybe that's it. Maybe you're tired of being afraid of stuff, or just even going out to the bar where people are drunk and intoxicated. You don't know. There's a lot of variables. Bad things can happen. Fights break out usually when you mix alcohol with stuff. And I used to be kind of fearful when I went to the bars and stuff. And now as I started training jiu-jitsu, I realized that having the knowledge, having been in a situation that if it does turn bad, you're going to be okay and be able to handle it from a self-defense standpoint is kind of encouraging, even though you haven't been in a bunch of fights. Like, personally, I have not, but knowing that, I feel like my training would kick in and I would be able to handle that situation. I think it translates, obviously, like you said, to other things.
It does. The physical confidence definitely spills over. You know what I mean? Like, if you're physically confident, that spills over into pretty much every other aspect of your life, and especially in situations where a physical confrontation could happen. But even if you've developed your confidence in other areas, such as like art or something like that, you'll still be confident because you're good at something. Really developing your skills in anything. And knowing that you're good at something, like truly good at something, not like a faker, but truly good at something, that's a super big thing for someone to do. And, one of the things, because I was jumped, and you know this, I was jumped when I was a kid and had my nose broken, and, definitely wasn't super awesome. It was sucked. But, one of the things that as I got older, I started to notice, I'm still very hyper aware when I go into public settings. Like Jess, she thinks it's funny because the other day we were walking and she's like, you really are like always aware of your surroundings. And we walked in and like I saw someone that I knew from the gym, like as soon as I walked into a room, because I do it unknowingly, saw them, and then but she didn't even see what I was doing. She was like, what is he doing? I ran off and came up behind him and was messing with him, and I'm just hyper aware of my surroundings.
Yeah. But
one thing that I did sort of to notice, and this is where kind of for me was my big fear thing, is that I would be nervous in these certain situations, just kind of like you were. But then I started to ask myself, like, how many times has something bad ever happened? One time. Like one time in my whole life. One time when I was walking home from school when I was in 7th grade, something bad happened. How many times has it happened since then? Never. It's never happened again. So why am I going to let one experience ruin the whole thing? You know what I mean? Why am I going to let it, dictate my life from that point on? It's like, it's like when you're a kid, you try a vegetable and you're like, oh, I don't like that vegetable. Yeah. But as an adult, you're like, well, maybe you should give it a try. You might like it now. You know what I mean? Like it might be all right. Just because you had one bad experience with it doesn't mean it's always going to be bad.
Right.
And so for me, like a lot of times with fears, it's something you have to be mindful of. If you start getting fearful or tight, I notice a lot of times I get very tight in my stomach, in my chest, and even my shoulders. And if I start to feel that, I'll start to take a step back and think about, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I nervous? Why am I scared or whatever it might be? And when I was younger, I had a lot of really weird, completely like, what's the word? Irrational fears. Yeah. Like I would be here's one that's funny considering who I am now. I used to be nervous about going into a coffee shop. Because like I wanted to sometimes I'd want to like sit down and like there'd be times where I'd be out and about and I'm like, I want to sit down and read a book here because I've got a couple hours to kill. I want to sit here and read a book at the coffee shop. So fucking stupid. And I was nervous about it because it's just a public situation and a public setting, or I was nervous that I was going to order the coffee wrong or something, or whatever it is, that kind of stuff. And then I eventually said, that's stupid, because I'm looking in the window and I see that there's all kinds of people like writing and reading books in a coffee shop. This is so dumb. This is such a dumb fear. It literally is the dumbest fear ever. And so, a lot of times I see how stupid the fears really are, and then I just choose to ignore them and just proceed with what I want to do.
I think what Jiu-Jitsu teaches you to do is acclimate yourself to uncomfortable situations. So you get used to being uncomfortable, and then the feeling of being uncomfortable or nervous becomes kind of like a norm. It's like a normal sensation, and then you've overcome it. Because some people, like for me, when I was a white belt, even going to a new gym, going to your gym for the first time, you're nervous. Yeah. Like you're nervous for the first, little bit of time because you're constantly like, am I, good enough? Am I going to get embarrassed? What's going to happen? What are these people going to think of me? And but I think you get used to that feeling of being uncomfortable or going in a situation that is not going to be, the safest and not the most enjoyable at times. Especially as a white belt, it's a little, at times it can get kind of make you nervous. So I think,
guess, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you haven't been a white belt forever, so I mean, like,
no, I see. Here's the funny thing about it. I talk about this all the time. I know that things are tough.
Right.
And I definitely know the nervousness because I used to feel the nervousness. Like, I mean, seriously, like sometimes it would be like every single day I would be coming to the gym and I would have to like pump myself up and I'd be listening to music, trying to get myself ready, and I remember like when I first came to this gym, when I left my old gym, I experienced a ton of nerves because I was at one point on a team that was like the local rival to this gym. Mm-hmm. And so going in here, you're kind of going into the enemy's lair, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm rolling with guys that were like, didn't know me necessarily, didn't like me, but it's like, whatever, it's all right. You know what I mean? Like you just, like you said, you get used to that feeling, you get used to it. But the one thing I'll say is that the physical part of it, the physical struggle, sometimes the mental stuff where like, I'm going in to train with new people, that would definitely get me like nervous because I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to roll some new people and I'm going to get smashed by some people and I want to try to perform well. But the actual physical struggle, the exertion, that part, I never disliked that. Mm-hmm. I always liked that. Like when people like talk about that kind of stuff as a negative thing, I'm like, man, it feels so good. Like for me, like my body, like when it's used up, like when it's like my body's been used physically, I feel good, man. I feel like this is what my body was meant to do. It wasn't meant to do nothing. It was meant to get out there and be worked. I feel like one of my ex-girlfriends, she used to drive horses. For college, it was her college job. She would drive the horse carriages downtown Louisville. So you get on there and you'd like pay them for a ride. They would drive you around in a nice little carriage. People love to do it for their dates and stuff. Well, she was telling me about some of the horses because what they would do is they would grab these horses from Amish country, where the Amish people were, and they would, grab one of the horses and, buy one of the horses and take them to be a carriage driver. Well, she said that some of the horses didn't do very well because they were too much of a workhorse. Like they wanted to give up and move around. Like, so basically sometimes these horses would be so pent up with energy that they'll just they would start going too fast, or they wouldn't really listen to you because they wanted to move. Whereas other horses were a little bit more relaxed and they were whatever. I feel like I'm one of those workhorses.
Mm-hmm.
Like every day I have to do some sort of activity, movement, something. I just can't sit around and do nothing. My body has to exert itself physically in some way, or I just don't feel right. You know what I mean? And this is something I've kind of come to understand about myself later on, as I got older, because I noticed man, if I don't exercise or do something, even if it's just some yoga or a nice long walk, I just don't feel very good.
Right. Well, I think that a big component is, say it's hard to kind of get up in the morning and get it a workout in, or sometimes man, I don't feel like going to jiu-jitsu, but once you do, and then once you get in there and start moving and you get a good exercise in, and after you're done, the relief and the feeling of just accomplishment, and your body's also kind of used up, like you said, those muscles feel like they've worked, and then as you're just starting to relax and kind of melt in, that as far as we do the stretching afterwards, how good it feels to just do the deep breathing and the just relaxing type stretching. I mean, that's so much more enjoyable and so much more beneficial than if you haven't done anything all day and then you're just laying around breathing. I think
absolutely.
Getting that exertion out, I think is I feel the same way. I feel more sluggish if I don't do anything all day. If I just sit around all day and don't get any movement in, I feel flat. I feel my energy levels are low, as opposed to getting a good workout in. I feel more energized. And I think it's just fun. It's just a great way to get your body kind of woken up and used to that level, like you said. So
I agree. Yeah. So
it's just important. Yeah. I think it's important, but I don't know, Chewy, what have you seen? Maybe, I wanted to touch base as far as jiu-jitsu. What have people told you, or what have you seen that maybe it relates to when people start doing jiu-jitsu, how does their confidence change in different areas? Is there any areas that you've seen it be really beneficial in?
Oh man. I mean, so are you asking the question, how has jiu-jitsu benefited someone's confidence in some way off the mat? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, so we'll start with youngest to oldest. So I've got young kids come in the gym, and they're getting picked on by bullies, and they learn how to dismantle the bully as humanely as possible if they want to. I had one kid take a kid down and noogie him. I had one kid he did in a Sotogari, basic throw, took the kid down and just slammed him kind of hard, and the kid didn't mess with him anymore. You know what I mean? The kids, and when you see them after they do this, they walk around with their chest up. They can look you in the eyes and they're not afraid. They don't walk around coward. You can look at their body language a lot of times and tell which kids are naturally fearful. Whereas you look at some of the other kids, you can tell, and you can tell that shift in them because they walk around in a much different way. As far as young guys, a lot of times young guys come in because as a young, we'll use men, women are the same way, but especially men, where they need to learn how to channel the physicality that they have, I think. You get all that testosterone floating through, you need to do something with it. A lot of men, they learn how to exercise and channel that physicality and that aggression that they have into a positive form. And a lot of times for some of the young guys, it allows them to, prove something to themselves. It was this way for me. When I was very young, it was a way for me to prove that I could be good at something and that I could see the value of, and I'm talking about wrestling in high school as well with grappling. I could see the value of hard work, because it was man, if I would work my ass off at something and I really listen to what the people that are smarter at me or more knowledgeable about me, what they have to say, and really soak it in, I get pretty good at this thing. And then you're like, well, what if I take that to other realms? And this is as I've become an adult, I've continuously sought out mentors and people to learn from. And I listen to what they say. And when they give me something to execute, I do it relentlessly. It would be like my old wrestling coach or one of my old jiu-jitsu coaches. Hey, you should drill that armbar. You should drill that double leg. Okay, I'll drill it. And it's hey, I'll get a tip from one of my mentors. Hey, man, you should do this with your business. Okay, I'll do it. And I'll make it happen. You know what I mean? It's the same sort of idea. Or even not even business. Sometimes it's just life,
Right.
So hell, one of my mentors was you should meditate. So I fucking went down the rabbit hole with that shit. I was started meditating all the time. And so it helps, one channel that aggression, and it also helps to prove something to themselves, and also can help sort of teach young people the value of learning from someone that's a little bit older than you, maybe more knowledgeable than you. It also teaches them sort of that idea of just, again, the hard work and developing that work ethic. But even as you get older, like, sometimes there's older guys that at some point, maybe were involved in something, and they miss the camaraderie of sports and athletics, or maybe, one of the guys was at the gym was a coal miner, and he said that he kind of missed, he eventually was a coal miner, and then he became a lawyer. And when he became a lawyer, he said he kind of missed the camaraderie that would happen in the coal mines, because your coal miners, they were all kind of like crazy dudes just hanging out, doing this thing. And he says that, jiu-jitsu kind of gave him some of that camaraderie back. And I think that that's one thing where you don't necessarily see that all the time in society, where you have a place for people to come together like that. We're so separated by phones and technology that we'll just text each other, chat with each other that way. But for a place for someone to come in and, be like a little close-knit group, it just doesn't happen everywhere. Especially because a lot of people aren't necessarily religious anymore, because that was one of the components that religion would have given you. You would have been close-knit to a group that you would have seen every week, and you would have had some trust with them, because you kind of like think, well, hey, we all kind of believe the same thing, so I kind of trust you a little bit. Well, with jiu-jitsu, it's kind of the same way to a degree. I'm not trying to call it a religion, but I am saying that it's a place where you can come together for some common thread that we all kind of get behind, which is we're training, we're doing this jiu-jitsu stuff, and it allows us to become really, really close and bond to one another. I was talking about it last night. I was joking, like, where else in society do you just see a bunch of random, especially, women for sure, but like men, where do you see a bunch of men hugging each other? You know what I mean? Like you just don't see it very often. It's like, like I remember, you don't see a bunch of guys like hugging all over each other and it being like just normal. You might see it sometimes, like the bro hug, but I'm talking about like guys just giving each other big bear hugs, and it's completely okay and normal. Right. You know what I mean? It just, you don't see that all the time, and it's strange for some people. Like I know that we were the other night, Saturday, a bunch of us went out to get food, and afterwards we're all hugging. And you were there. Yeah. We're all hugging, and I remember kind of looking over, and I saw some glances from some people, and they're like looking like, "What the fuck are all these guys doing?" There's a bunch of hugging guys, And so it's a cool place where you can kind of, even if you're older and you've proven yourself, but you miss camaraderie and you miss like that kind of stuff, you can find that in those places. And again, that brings in maybe not necessarily the most. It's not a confidence thing, but it can be something where you just connect to people, and that's a beneficial thing for your life. Yeah. The last thing I guess I would say is that a lot of times people get into it for like fitness and health purposes. And I've seen a lot of people like get off medications like blood pressure or, cholesterol medications, because the jiu-jitsu itself is exercise, but then it also becomes a catalyst to get in better shape, because a lot of people are very unaware of what's going on with their body. They don't have some of the sensations that an athlete does. Right. An athlete's very in tune with their body. You know what I mean? They know when something's up. Whereas like a person that's basically doesn't do any sort of athletics, they're not very in tune with their body. They're not in tune with the machine that they are. And so when they start exercising, they start saying, well, hey, let me take out sodas. Wow, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good to take out those sodas. And when I drink soda, I don't feel very good. So I'll get rid of soda. And then it becomes, well, hey, let me I'm going to try meal prepping for a couple of weeks. Let's see how this goes. Wow, I lost, 2 or 3 pounds, and man, I feel really good. I didn't need a midday nap. Let me change my carbohydrate sources. I'm going to eat fruits and veggies and that kind of stuff instead of eating a bunch of bread. I feel even better. So it becomes this refining process, and it becomes a lifestyle change rather than just a simple activity. And then when people come around and all of a sudden they look better with their clothes off, I mean, people feel good about that, man. Like, if you like the way that you look when you look in the mirror at yourself, then you're going to present yourself to the world in a completely different way. Right. And so that's something there. So, I mean, just those are a couple. I could go off on a tangent for a long time.
What you hit on kind of inadvertently was the mental aspect of jiu-jitsu, like the confidence, mentally, how it allows you, I think, to take risks. Because if somebody's never been in a physical sport like a wrestling or, there's like football's pretty physical, but, I played soccer, which was kind of physical. but you're not like tackling people or like holding people. So I think it teaches you to take risk, because I think when you do jiu-jitsu, you take a risk and you're like, okay, I took a risk. I'm getting good at this. There's benefit. Let me try a risk in another aspect of my life. Let me try, to do YouTube videos or have a podcast or whatever it is. Like for you, for example, like that, I feel like that's a way that, I still want people to get that video that you showed of yourself with the button-down shirt, reading, and like
I don't know if that thing's ever going to see the light of day.
Dude, I hope. You should put it on Patreon. That'll get people to go look at it and it'll go viral.
Ooh,
but let me tell you, confidence. Like, you had no confidence in that video. You were doing nothing. You had no emotion, no confidence. You were just doing this thing, and you're like mad at yourself because you kept like messing up, and it didn't. And then look at you now.
Another thing about that video too was I was doing something for someone else. I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was doing something for my old business partner,
right.
And it was very hard for me. Even to this day, like if you try to get me to read off of a script, or if you get me to do something like that, I can't do it very well. Like, it's funny. We there's a video of Adam and I. We were doing a video, and it was kind of a scripted thing where, hey guys, like the channel, subscribe to the channel. You notice I don't do that on any of my videos because like it's so fake to me. So I did it for a couple times because like I worked with this like YouTube consultant. It's like basically provided from Google. They just give me a call and say, hey, would you like to go over some stuff? And it's for free. So I'm like, sure. And he was saying, you should do this. And I was okay. So I did it. It literally took me like 10, 20 minutes to record 10 seconds worth of me talking because it was so scripted. I can do a 10-minute video off the cuff and have a good coherent idea. But then if I try to script it, it just doesn't come from a genuine place, and so it's hard. But you are right. There is a certain element to being confident in front of the camera and being able to translate who you are, because who I was not coming through the video. And you're right about the risk thing. Jiu-Jitsu, it teaches you how to take risks, and you can take those risks elsewhere. And hell, there was a guy, I was just thinking about this when you said that. There was a guy who he still trains here, Patrick, who he came up to me one day and he got a good job that he was working at. And he told me, he said, I think that the reason is because of the gym, because he said that the environment that he came from at home wasn't really that conducive to growth and towards like betterment. And he said that just being around the people in the gym and working at something and becoming better at something himself allowed him the confidence and allowed him the sort of the drive to sort of have the feeling that I can do this. And he ended up getting himself a good job that he wanted. And he said that, as his own words, he said the reason he did it was because, or the reason it happened was because of the traits and the values that he got from the gym, and the motivation and the rub off from all the people that he was training with.
Well, yeah, you have to bet on yourself. Jiu-Jitsu, like, we are part of a team, but you're also, when you're out there competing, you're on your own. You got to bet on yourself. You got to bet on your abilities, your skill set, your confidence in yourself. And that's, I think Jiu-Jitsu breeds a lot of those things. For me personally, like going out on my own and taking risks and doing things like that. Like, I think if I didn't have Jiu-Jitsu to provide me some building of my confidence and just that little push, I think I wouldn't have done it. I think I would be less likely to do it, at least. So I think Jiu-Jitsu is really, if you stick with it, I think it molds you and changes you in so many ways.
It develops the ability to be a warrior. You know what I mean? And a warrior doesn't mean that you got to like go slashing people with swords, but it's the idea of fighting forward. You know what I mean? Like the idea to get out and fight whatever sort of fight you choose to fight. Maybe it's the fight to compete. Maybe it's the fight to run a business, and maybe it's a fight to go out and buy this, this piece of property that's going to cost a lot of money, and you're not sure what's going to happen, and you got to live in that unknown area, and you got to keep fighting forward. That's that's being a warrior, right? And Jiu-Jitsu, and there's other ways to develop it. And I don't want to like act like Jiu-Jitsu is the only way, but since we're on a Jiu-Jitsu podcast, it's the way that we'll talk about, right? And it's you can develop that warrior energy in you by putting yourself in these situations that Jiu-Jitsu offers, and you learn, like you said, how to be there. So I think we've come back full circle.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I just thought of, really, it's resiliency and dealing with setback too. You do it all the time. Even as an upper belt, you're dealing with getting tapped out or learning other people have different techniques and positions, and also teaches you to adjust as well. So I think definitely, when you lose a tournament, you learn from it. You have to demonstrate that resiliency to get back into the gym, work towards a goal, and then go back out there and compete again. And I've done that numerous times because of jiu-jitsu, just with the sole purpose of jiu-jitsu. And I think that spills over into other aspects of, if something doesn't go well in your business, looking how to come back and take a look at all aspects and be resilient, not get discouraged, try it again. Because that's all jiu-jitsu is about. It's about learning. You get tapped out. You learn from it. You try to make adjustments and move forward. So,
yeah, to me, that's about being a warrior. Like if you're a warrior on the battlefield, right? You'll lose some battles sometimes, but if you want to win the war, you got to keep coming back, and you can't simply fold at the first sign of something going the wrong way. You got to dig deep and be resilient, and those are definitely qualities of a good warrior, and again, we don't necessarily fight as much as we used to. So we have to channel that energy in other forms that are, productive in the society that we're a part of.
Yep. Awesome, Chewy. That's good. We did it. So guys, the reason if the audio sounds a little bit different today, it's because I'm at the gym. Today so for some of you guys that have maybe purchased like the Half Guard series or some of the stuff, you may have a Fundamentals Vault course that you're a part of. And originally that course was just going to be concepts and drills and ideas that I was going to share. And then I decided to screw that. I'm going to add a bunch of techniques too. It's going to be the same stuff I'm going to be sharing with my students, all my white belts and blue belts and stuff like that. But it's going to be a huge encyclopedia of the fundamental techniques. And concepts are great. I like concepts, but I think that in the beginning, a lot of times I think techniques are more helpful to beginners. I know some beginners maybe will question that, but the thing that I think about is me. I didn't really understand concepts very well until I became better. First off, I needed to learn how to do the thing. And then afterwards, after I was doing the thing, then you could tell me, here's kind of why you're doing the thing. And then it's okay. You know what I mean? It's kind of like in the Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi has him waxing on, waxing off, paint the fence, right? And he's like, why the hell am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense to me. And then later on, he has that situation where the guy tries to punch him and he just instinctively does the movement to block, which he's been doing with the fence. And so it's the same idea. He didn't understand really why he was doing it until he was put into a certain situation. So sometimes for me, even to this day, I like to learn the moves first. And then after I have the moves down to where I can use them, then I can kind of go back and be like, okay, why do these moves work? What makes them special? And I can grasp it so much better than if you were to just teach me concepts and principles, because it's I don't have a deep enough knowledge of the thing to really it's like having no engine to a car, right? Mm-hmm. You have the frame and everything. It's all that's there, but then you don't have an engine to drive it. The techniques are the driver. Those are the things that really give it the engine to the concepts. You have the concepts, no techniques, great. You understand how the position works, but what are you going to do with it? Having techniques with the concept without the concepts means that you'll be able to do the technique, but then if something kind of goes haywire with the technique, you won't know how to adjust. So once you get the techniques down, then you kind of add the concepts in there, and then you have that sort of the sort of complete package where right. you have some driving force with your movements, and then if something doesn't work, you'll have the conceptual knowledge of how everything works to then make adjustments as need be, because you'll have the principles as to why they work. So the series will be cool. So we got a bunch of filming to do today, so I wasn't going to be able to make it out there, and then. How can people, if there's already stuff out there, right? You already have some stuff in that vault. Yeah, how can people get a hold of that if they want to?
If they want to get a hold of it, there's only one way right now. Basically, if you've purchased the Half Guard series, or if you purchased the Wrestling for Jiu-Jitsu series that I have, any of those, you'll get it as an option on the back end. I did kind of a soft launch with it. And what it does is right now, the way that it works is it'll release one video to you every single week for 6 months. And then the way that I'm going to do it is once I get done with all these techniques, the techniques will be in there. and then it'll release one video to you each week. So basically you'll have this encyclopedia of techniques, and then over the course of 6 months, you'll get lessons from everything about some basic meditation techniques to some of the videos showing me like what I meal prep. And then there's even videos with like some basic stretches that I do, as well as like conceptual ideas about positions and some basic ideas about learning jiu-jitsu and all this kind of stuff. Basically, the idea is that it's something for my guys, so that this way, like any new white belt that comes in, I can give them this and to help them out. Mm-hmm. And then it's just, hey, like as people are, on the line, I've become like, for a lot of people, like this online coach for them, just to sort of help them out and augment their game. And so if I was going to share this with someone, I would share it with them, because it's the same fundamental stuff I'm going to show my guys. So I'll share it with the other people, online as well. So
it sounds like a bunch of the stuff that you wish you would have had when you started. Like a bunch of content. Yeah, it's like you talked about. It's like you've told me, like, hey, Eugene, if you're doing video, do stuff that you would actually be interested in. It's like stuff that you probably would have been interested in as a white belt that could have helped your journey along or your path and made things a little smoother.
And some of the stuff is not stuff that I would have been interested in, but it's stuff that if I would have listened to, that it would have helped me out tremendously. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the idea. Basically, when I sat down and originally wrote out the sort of the plan for this thing, it was like, what are the things that were most useful to me as a white and blue belt? And then what are the things that I wish I would have known and I even include purple belt in this, because I got to my purple belt within 2 years, so I was still a beginner. So they include all those different things in there. And this way, for someone in the same boat as me, they would have some options and things like that. So
awesome, Chewy. Well, thanks for, I'm sure people enjoy the material, and, it'll be awesome when it releases. Thank you guys for checking out this episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. If you love the podcast, head over to iTunes and subscribe and leave us a review. We really appreciate that. And also, guys, the Patreon page, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And if you're looking for CBD products, charlottesweb.com, and use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu10 and get 10% off of your purchase price of CBD. So with that said, guys, we really appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.